Green energy isn't just saving the planet, guys. It is completely rewiring global power. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive and frankly fascinating global shift. We're going to objectively break down exactly how the green transition is being used as a serious geopolitical tool. We'll look at the hard data, the policies, and the cash driving what analysts are calling the Dragon's Gambit, China's strategy of structured interdependence. So, get ready for a really focused look at how the world economy is quietly being rewired right under our noses.
To really wrap our heads around this huge global strategy, we actually need to start small, with a local story. Picture this: Navarra, northern Spain. A bustling appliance factory that had hummed along for literally decades abruptly shuts its doors. Boom. 600 people left totally jobless. Mortgages go unpaid, school fees become a real struggle. And the reason? Well, they simply couldn't compete with factories thousands of miles away in China.
But here is the crazy central paradox of our story. That factory, it's not actually dead. The surprising savior stepping in to revive this exact same site is Lithium, a massive Chinese battery manufacturer. Think about that for a second. The very country whose competitive pressure effectively killed the local European factory is now the exact one arriving to save it.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the numbers here are just staggering. Beijing isn't just reopening the doors, they are bringing 700 new jobs and a 400 million euro investment right into this local Spanish town. It's a massive, massive lifeline for those workers. But, as you'll see, this local revival perfectly sets the stage for a much bigger macro story about the entire global economy. And that little local Spanish revival is just one piece of a much larger shift. Section 1. Reversing the global dependency.
So, to understand how we got here, we got to look at this massive 30-year economic pivot. For most of the 20th century, China was basically the world's factory floor, right? Exporting incredibly cheap goods, but remaining heavily dependent on Western tech and foreign capital. But when Xi Jinping consolidated power, he looked at that dependency as a serious threat, and he decided to reverse the equation entirely. That brings us to the defining concept of this whole strategy: structured interdependence. This is a strategic system where the cost of defying Beijing gradually becomes higher than the cost of accommodating it. It's a calculated shift where decoupling from China's advanced manufacturing suddenly becomes a way more painful choice than just accepting the dependence.
See, the goal was never isolation. Actually, scratch that. It was the exact opposite. Xi decided he would make the rest of the world dependent on China instead. This wasn't some accidental shift in global trade dynamics. It was, and absolutely still is, a calculated geopolitical gambit meticulously designed to ensure China remains completely indispensable.
So, how exactly do you go about making the entire world dependent on you today? Well, you leverage the future. Section 2. Leveraging the green transition.
Just think about the battery powering whatever device you're watching this on right now. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of execution we're talking about. In 2023, China commanded a massive 75% of global battery production capacity. That leaves a measly 25% for literally the entire rest of the world combined. I mean, if the whole world desperately needs to transition to clean energy, and China controls the batteries, well then China effectively controls the transition itself.
They built this absolute dominance by hyper-focusing on what Chinese economists call the Jingsanyang, or the new three: solar cells, lithium batteries, and electric vehicles. Over the last 2 decades, these specific future-facing industries have methodically, step-by-step, replaced basic textiles and cheap appliances as China's primary economic engine.
To truly grasp the scope of this strategy, you have to look at the timeline. Back in the early 2000s, this massive green tech investment begins. Fast forward to 2013, the Global Belt and Road Initiative launches. Then come the huge climate pledges, hitting peak carbon emissions by 2030 and targeting full carbon neutrality by 2060. This timeline clearly demonstrates how Beijing operates on a really long-term horizon, turning international climate pledges into powerful, long-term geopolitical leverage.
And that global leverage brings us right back to the European continent. Section 3, Europe's Trojan Horse Dilemma.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how fractured Europe's response actually is. Because while the green transition is totally necessary, different European nations are reacting to this sudden influx of Chinese cash and tech in wildly different ways. It's kind of ironic, honestly. You have Hungary acting as a welcoming gateway, openly championing Beijing's interests. Then there's Spain, the pragmatic partner,
keeping its doors wide open and talking to everyone to reduce their own vulnerability. But meanwhile, France and Germany are playing the hardline regulators, pushing for a strict made-in-Europe strategy that demands technology transfers. And the irony here? That mirrors the exact rules China used to impose on Western companies wanting access to the Chinese market.
Which all leads us to this really pivotal question. Is a Chinese factory on European soil a gift, or is it a Trojan horse? Is it 700 jobs, or is it 700 hostages to Beijing's goodwill? Europe finds itself in a deeply contradictory position right now. They absolutely need China's technology to survive the green transition, while simultaneously fearing it as a massive instrument of control.
But, Europe is really just one piece of the puzzle here. Section 4. Latin America's resource gamble.
Over in Latin America, the stakes involve vast natural resources, like those massive lithium fields beneath the high Andean Plateau, rather than just factory floors. Let's compare these two massive regional bets side by side. Europe, as we saw, wants tech transfers and green survival without the strategic dependency. Latin America, on the other hand, wants capital, jobs, and industrial infrastructure. They're desperately trying to break free from their historical cycle of just simple resource extraction. Both of these are incredibly risky bets, and they're entirely dependent on a variable neither region truly controls: what China actually wants in the long run.
And the scale of this Latin American gamble? It is absolutely exploding. By 2022, trade between China and Latin America hit a staggering $500 billion. I mean, wow. That represents a total displacement of both the United States and the European Union, who have been rapidly outpaced by Chinese investment in the region over just the last 20 years.
But we have to look closely at what is actually moving in this trade relationship. A massive 95% of Latin American exports to China are raw materials. Think soy, copper, oil. Only 5% are other goods. Now, dependency theorists argue this is just a predatory extraction cycle keeping Latin America on the periphery. But others counter that China is arriving as a true partner, providing desperately needed capital and tech that the West consistently failed to deliver. Both perspectives are actively shaping the reality on the ground right now.
So, let's pull the camera way back for a second and look at the ultimate global endgame driving all these localized investments. Section 5, the master plan. See, China learned a lot from the sometimes unsustainable debt traps of its past megaprojects. Now, they're shifting their focus to a new, what they call small and beautiful Belt and Road. We're talking electric vehicle factories, renewable energy arrays, 5G networks, and data centers. These investments, they're smaller, they're way faster to execute, harder to refuse, deeply embedded into local economies, and honestly, infinitely more difficult to reverse. So, the crucial point is this target year, 2049. While Democratic leaders typically operate on, four-year election cycles, Xi Jinping is optimizing for 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic. That is the target year by which China aims to be unambiguously the world's leading power. It is a staggering project of national rejuvenation, measured not in terms of single political terms, but in whole generations.
The Dragon's Gambit is already in full motion, whether it's 700 revived jobs in Spain or billions pouring into green infrastructure in Latin America. The contracts are signed and the batteries are already being built. And while the rest of the world argues about how to respond, you gotta wonder, will that global response come before or after checkmate? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredibly complex web. Keep thinking critically about the structures around us, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.